Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the special edition of the Feuerstein's Fire American Soccer Show as we talk to you about this failed June international window for the U.S. men's national team. Two friendlies against two strong nations in Europe, losing to Turkiye 2-1 in East Hartford, Connecticut, and then the ultimate debacle on Tuesday night, last night, when they were destroyed 4-0, all in the first half, inside the first 40 minutes of the match. All I can tell you, folks, is that this is the lowest point the U.S. men's national team has had, or is currently in, I should say, maybe since not qualifying for the 2018 FIFA World Cup that was held in Russia. The continued mess of U.S. soccer just really makes you mad. It makes you angry. And it also makes you upset when some of our top players decides to take a summer vacation and not be in the Gold Cup. Because I mean, how many more legitimate competition match days do we have left? After this Gold Cup, none. Every single match will be friendly games. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be harping on players who are currently injured, recovering from injury, or maybe have picked up a nagging knock. But it really, really makes me upset when you see a performance like that from the majority of a roster that looks like they're not ready for prime time. I would say at the moment, Diego Luna, maybe even Jack McGlynn. I think Patrick Ajimong might still not be ready yet. But those two, I think, are ready for the national team. It was disheartening. It was upsetting. It was very sad and very angry. And I know I made comments. I made posts on social media. I mean, it was just disgusting and terrible. And I will get to those comments later on. But what I would like to do right now is play for you a recorded interview I had with one of my colleagues. He's from South America. He also does pay attention to what goes on with the U.S. men's national team. And this is a recorded interview with Kelvin Loyola of Bolavip.com. He also writes on other soccer websites here in the States as well. So here is that interview right now with Kelvin. I hope you all enjoy it. So please sit back, relax, and have some fun. And I'll be back with you when this interview is over. Here he is right now, Kelvin Loyola of Bolavip.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the American Soccer Show here, the Feuerstein's Fire American Soccer Show, as we discuss the absolute abomination of a result and a performance by this U.S. men's national team squad, who will be going to the CONCACAF Gold Cup this upcoming weekend, as they'll be hosting Trinidad and Tobago in their first group stage game this coming Sunday, which is, of course, is Father's Day. Joining me from Bolavip in South America is Mr. Kelvin Loyola. And Kelvin not only pays attention to what goes on in CONMEBOL in South American football, but he also pays attention to what goes on with the U.S. men's national team. Kelvin, it's great to have you back on. And let me just say this right now. Those opening 40 minutes were absolutely atrocious. And we all know Switzerland's a very good team. They're at least a top 10 side in Europe, in UEFA. But when you get demolished the way that those players looked in that match, you cannot, as an American soccer fan, even as a football media writer or a pundit, you just cannot sit there and wax poetically or try to pull positives out of your rear end. I mean, that was an absolute disgusting performance.
Yeah, it was a bad performance and a long line of bad performances, right? This is a team that hasn't played well. You can make a case that this team hasn't played well since the 2022 World Cup. There was that parentheses with BJ Callahan where the team, I don't know what they did during those two games, but they played so well against a pretty weak Canadian team and a Mexican national team that was in complete disarray at the time. But nonetheless, they played very well those two games. And aside from maybe some of the group play during the 2022 World Cup, I don't think we could count in one hand the good performances we've had since then, right? It's a culmination of a lot of things, I think. And hopefully what I hope that these results are doing are debunking myths about MLS versus Europe and 60-man depth charts that we've done over the years. Like, this is a national team which realistically has about 14 to 15 national team caliber players that could hold their own on the international stage against teams like Switzerland, Uruguay, Turkiye. I'm not even going to go to the top teams in the world. I'm just trying to go to teams within their range, right? Ecuador, Paraguay. I mean, we have about 15 players that could really do that. And then the rest of those players that fill up the 23 to 26 man rosters are filler players. The expectation that any of those players are going to perform at that kind of a level is remote. They can help the team, and players like Pulisic and McKinney and Weah, who have that international caliber level, get to the final third and score a couple of goals and push us through, or even get a goal themselves, right? Those BC team players. But, this notion that we're a 60-man deep national team, that if you insert this guy and that, I think these games have proven that that's completely a falsehood. It doesn't matter whether they play in Europe or in MLS. It's a falsehood. This is a team that has about 14 to 15 international caliber players that could hold their own. And then the rest that make it up, you have to tighten it up and make sure that these guys play as a unit. I am flabbergasted that we have maintained this kind of theme that we're just giving away caps to players who don't belong on the national team yet or haven't done anything to earn their spot on the national team. Granted, some of the A players have done their part to play so poorly to allow these players who are not ready to play at the national team level get these opportunities. But it's a long line of calamities that have led to this. And at this point, my biggest thing right now is I've heard all the pundits talk, from Landon to Tim Howard, who I agree with a lot of what they said. But there's one thing that shocks me that nobody's saying. Besides the players that are not playing, right? The ones that are that for whatever reason they're sick, they're getting transferred, they got to go on vacation, their tummy hurts. Besides that narrative, you're 1 year away from the World Cup. You have no real time to really make up for the 4 years, for the 3 years that you've lost, right? The team has failed miserably in the last couple of years. You need to get momentum going. Nobody has said something. Now, Mauricio Pochettino does share a lot of the blame for a lot of the lineup choices he's making. But then again, what can he do when most of his team tells him, I can't go? What's the guy going to do? He's got to play with what he has. He can't create a player and say, well, I'm going to create the clone of Christian Pulisic to take his place. No, he goes with what he has. And my biggest thing is with all these pundits, from guys who have weekly shows to guys who are on YouTube, to guys who are like Tony Miola and Jimmy Conrad, who have a podcast almost every other day. How come nobody says, how on earth are we paying a manager $6 million a year for him to only coach his best players 60% of the time? Before we got on the air, I looked at the 10 games. Pochettino has coached the closest team to an A team, 6 games. 6 times. The rest, he has coached players who will not be at the World Cup. Most 80% of those players won't be at the World Cup. The Gold Cup are just going to pile on more games where he doesn't play with the team that he needs to play to prepare his team for a World Cup. So why are you paying this guy $6 million to do that? Why has nobody in the federation or in the media go, this is a waste of time? We might as well not play the Gold Cup. On top of the fact that we've instilled to the American public that winning the Gold Cup doesn't mean anything anymore because we've won it so many times. It's a tournament beneath us. You know, instead of trying to fix their public image, they set out these notions that, you know, this stuff doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the World Cup. Well, all of that's trickled down to the players. And this is the end result of years of doing this, from negotiating with club teams to see if this player will play 30 minutes. I mean, ridiculous things that don't happen in any other national team. You think Lionel Scaloni or Marcelo Bielsa negotiates with any club about the minutes that they're not going to risk their jobs ever to protect the interests of AC Milan, Inter Milan, or Juventus? No, the national team's the national team. The players that want to be there go and play. The players that don't most likely will not play ever again. So, you know, this is just one calamity step after another, and here we are. I mean, a year removed, and this team is, you know, I thought this team couldn't get any lower than the Copa America, and incredibly, it's feasible that this team could lose to Trinidad and Tobago in the opening match of the Gold Cup. It's feasible that this team could lose all 3 Gold Cup games in their group.
It is. No,
it's not impossible.
I completely agree with you. And once again, Kelvin, this is the buffoonery of the U.S. Soccer Federation continuing to assume they can skate by before they reach the pinnacle of world football, which is the World Cup itself. It's going to be here in the United States and in Mexico and Canada. And then you're thinking to yourself here, as you said, they could get grouped in the Gold Cup. And then when those players who are supposed to be here will be at the World Cup, they could get grouped as well and join South Africa as the second host nation to get grouped in a World Cup. I mean, they don't want to see that. They don't want to see that everything that's been going on under this federation's stewardship of the game in this country, that they are a joke, that they are a laughing stock, not just to now everyone that supports this game in this country, but everywhere around the world. They're laughing now. They're laughing. That's how I feel.
I have to tell you the truth. I mean, I live, one of the great advantages that I have from living abroad and kind of living away from the bubble of the U.S. soccer is I live abroad. Look, the only advantage Mauricio Pochettino has right now is that nobody knows what's going on with the United States. So nobody knows what's going on with Mauricio Pochettino. The world is going to find out what's going on in the United States when the booklet comes out, which is kind of telling you the stories and the preview shows start happening. 3 months before the World Cup starts, they go, well, Mauricio Pochettino is coaching the United States. They're not doing really well. Obviously, in Argentina, there's a little bit more buzz, but the larger part of the world has no idea. That's the only advantage that this national team has right now is that it's not France, it's not Italy, who everybody in the world knows that Italy is in a dire situation. Nobody really knows what's going on with the U.S. Us who are passionate, who cover this game and are in the know, we know what's going on. And this ridiculous federation, the only thing that they're relying on is the incompetence that everybody who doesn't know anything about it, they could just show up for the World Cup, have a miracle World Cup, and then, all will be right. But again, that's just what this federation has turned into in many ways. I mean, in many ways, we've taken baby steps to start ignoring the process, right? We started negotiating with club teams about minutes for national team players in important games, not friendlies, important games that in other countries would have cost Greg Berhalter his job in many an occasion. We went from doing that. We went from giving players time off. We went from empowering the players above the manager. All of this under Greg Berhalter's watch, right? So he's one of the biggest components as to why this happened. to this, which is now the lunatics have taken over the asylum in a way. And yes, everyone has their, has their issues, but you can't possibly manage a national team program trying to contemplate the issues of all 22 players. It's ridiculous. You need your star players to play. There are players who, the biggest slap in the face to the entire process is these last two friendlies. There were players in Switzerland and in Turkey who are going to play the Club World Cup, who played these matches. Why couldn't Weston McKennie and Timothy Weah play these matches is beyond me. There's no logical explanation for that. Serginho Dest was in the nomination. He was called up for these games. It disappeared completely from the map. He's not there. Apparently, it's an injury. I don't know. Nobody's ever really said why he's not there. I believe it has something to do with making sure that that he gets back and has a good preseason. And you can make a case for that. But, Serginho was playing before with PSV. These games would have helped him out a little bit heading towards a World Cup where he needs to have motion. So, at one point, how do you sustain a national team program if you're always coddling to everybody and not the goal at hand? The goal at hand is to get this team going. With all the mismanagement that Greg Berhalter had in his first 4 years as the manager, he still won 3 championships. Whether, whatever weight we give him, at least there's a picture of the United States holding a trophy. Even for the naysayers, you say, all right, we're not on the right track, but at least they're winning. Now we've gone from that to, we bombed out of the last Nations League, couldn't even get to the final, lost 2 games in a row to Canada and Panama, not even Mexico, bombed out of the Copa America, completely threw away the only tournament setting that we're going to have come the World Cup. It doesn't even matter if we win this Gold Cup or not.
Mm-hmm.
The likelihood of that happening is slim now. If you take a look at what the team Mexico and Canada and even Panama has, I just feel that so much time has been wasted, and between the manager search, between rehiring Berhalter, between signing Pochettino, so much time has gone away, and we're just trying to rush to get there. And what happened in 1994 is a clear example. 1994, in order to get to the round of 16, these guys had these guys who were most of them were semi-professionals, had to live together for 2 years, basically, and play club teams, college teams, international opponents. I think they played like Colombia like 4 or 5 times before. Something that will never happen in world football ever again. We needed to do that to produce the results that we produced come the 94 World Cup, right? So using that example of all the work that had to be put in just to get to that performance, look at what we're doing now with guys who are obviously in a better part of their careers are playing for top teams in Europe. Some of them are in Europe, and many, and now there's a professional league. We're doing everything that's the opposite of what we should be doing. If there's anything that world soccer has taught us, that a process begins with building the foundations and repetition, playing games over and over and over again, and keeping your starting lineup going, especially on a national team. Because we're not a nation that has 60 players. We're a nation, like I said before, has 15, 14 players. And we needed that repetition. We needed these guys going. We needed these guys to get as many games as possible. And we've blown it. The evidence is what we've been watching in the last few years. Gold Cups with mixed lineups, another Gold Cup with another mixed lineup coming up. These 2 friendlies, which really, on the grand scale of things, are meaningless. Even had we had won these matches, they would have been meaningless because nobody's going to be in the World Cup. Basically, was on these rosters. So it's an all-time low.
It is. It really is. And what really even bothers me the most is that they're calling up players, and I'm not blaming Pochettino on this because apparently, what can he do when you have the federation telling him at times, it feels like the federation is telling him who he should select to come into the camp.
Yeah,
Why is Matt Turner? What?
I don't think that's the truth. I cannot believe that Mauricio Pochettino is going to accept this job and be told who to call in. I think there's work done, and he sees players because that's another thing that's starting to get instilled, which we have to not like. Pochettino's not going to take this job and put his reputation on the line, even though it's the U.S. and not have any say in the matter. What I think is that this window was the rude awakening for him.
Right.
I think this window, he had an idea, and then the federation told him, look, we're going to do this and this and this, and his hands were tied. Everybody's talking about the paycheck. Poch could walk.
Oh, I know.
He's a manager with pedigree. I would walk as well. I mean, if I can't call in the guys that I want to work with, why stay?
Yeah.
What's the point?
No, I agree with you.
Coaching the host nation of the World Cup under these circumstances is not a good idea.
No, it's not. No, it's not. But you know what else is not a good idea, though, Kelvin? Matt Turner, starting in this match against Switzerland, where he's never had a starting minute playing for either Nottingham Forest or being on loan with Crystal Palace. He hasn't started since the Nations League debacle in both games. And he looked lost. He looked not properly prepared himself in the net. I'm not saying that's on Pochettino. I'm saying that's on Turner. Because
it's on everybody.
No, I mean, it is everybody, but I'm just saying the starting goalkeeper for a national team who's not starting for his club team should not be on the national team at all. Third string, yeah, fine. Fill the roster spot, but he should not be starting. I'm sorry.
But again, we get to a situation, who do you call in his place? I mean, at this point, there's nobody else. And that's another realization that Pochettino has. Goalkeeper, I mean, talking about goalkeeping, the goalkeeper spot, I think at this point is a dead conversation. It's one of the weakest spots on the national team. The only other player that could really compete with Matt Turner gets injured all the time. Zach Steffen gets injured every time he goes to the national team. Every other solution that we're throwing out there at this point is unfeasible. Yeah, the kid in Barcelona, Diego Cochen, was a feasible option when Pochettino took over, because even though he was playing in Barcelona B and you could have brought him along, but at this point now, a year removed from the World Cup, no. Why would you want to expose this kid to that? So you're going to have to use maybe a Matt Freeze and the goalkeeper from the Columbus Crew, Patrick Schulte, and that's basically all you've got. Unless something amazing happens in the next European season for Diego Cochen or Gago Solina finds his groove somehow, that's what you have. Again, I think at this point, pointing out certain yes, you can blame Pochettino for the 9 changes he made from one game to the next. I think he made a fatal mistake in just handing out a caps, even though he might have wanted a C. I think he should have realized that, hey, this team really needs a win. This team really needs a morale-boosting win, and he should have put out his best lineup possible. But then again, I understand Pochettino trying to do these mixes and matches because I guess he wants to say, hey, if you don't want to come, I'm going to find somebody who does. And it blew up in his face. And again, the guys who are laxing their way to the World Cup because they feel that the World Cup spots are assured have ammunition to go, you see, why should I go? The understudies are 6 times worse than I am on a bad day. So all of this leads to what we're talking about, right? It's just one bad egg after another, after another, after another, after another. Eventually toxic waste has to be thrown away, and this program has to do something after this World Cup to really cleanse itself and get back on track. I doubt it at this point, but at this point, I'm one of those people that believe that the worst thing that could happen for U.S. soccer is to have a good World Cup, because there's going to be somebody in U.S. soccer that says, "You see, I told you so." You see, we didn't have to all the bickering and the crying and all of this. We went to the World Cup. We made it to the round of 8, let's say. what a successful World Cup. We beat Pakistan, and eventually we lost to Holland again, but we beat all these things. What a great World Cup. That's the worst thing that could happen, because it's only going to add fuel to say that what they're doing is working. And when it's clearly not. I mean, anybody who has any soccer notion knows that this isn't working. This team hasn't played a good game in years. And we're at this point because a lot of things led to this point. And honestly, I believe that the biggest thing that led to this point was changing our identity. We used to play a certain way that got us results all the way to the 2010 World Cup. And then that changed from one day to the next. One day, Sunil Gulati woke up and said, I want to play attractive soccer, and that's what we're going to do. And they have buffooned their way to these results that we have today, which is a team that on paper should be really attractive and great. But, there's stories behind each and every one of these players. And the only good thing that I could honestly say along the lines from when they decided to change their philosophy till now was Tab Ramos being the youth national team director, because he honestly tried to instill a sense of belonging in the program. He kind of took a page out of Oscar Tavares' playbook in Uruguay and kind of wanted the players who come to the national team to know who the past player was. That's why he invited Brad Friedel, Tony Meola, and I believe John Harkes one time went there too. And he wanted to install this sense of history, because the U.S. does have history. We have players that finished fourth in the Copa America twice. We have players that made it to the semifinals of a World Cup. We made it to the quarterfinals of a World Cup. I mean, there isn't much history, but it said we've won championships, right? Gold Cups, yeah, we might frown upon them, but they're our regional championship, and we did it. And at one point, we were getting really close to surpassing Mexico, which should be a goal of the program. The program should not throw away Gold Cups going, it's a B tournament. Mexico still in the standings is the all-time Gold Cup winning leader. We want to be over Mexico. We have to set standards. Even when we're playing teams like the Dominican Republic and Haiti, we have to set a standard. Somebody has to walk in and go, hey, yeah, you see this board has Mexico and us at the bottom. I want to get closer. So you got to win this Gold Cup. And I don't care how you do it, but I want to see us lift this. That's what we have to do. That instills a winning mentality. But if you're just throwing away tournaments and saying they're all experimental just because we just have to do well at the World Cup, well, what is doing well at the World Cup? Getting to the round of 16? We did that already. Getting to the quarterfinals? We did that already. Getting to the semifinals? Hey, we may not want to admit that, but we did that already. The U.S. waited to the semifinals of the first World Cup. It was the first World Cup, but we did it already. We just tell the new soccer public that we haven't done it. But we did it already. History indicates that we did it. So we have, what is the gold standard? If winning championships isn't the gold standard anymore, if being the best team in CONCACAF isn't the gold standard anymore, if trying to win the Copa America in your home soil wasn't the gold standard, what is the gold standard for this team? Where is this program trying to go? I think we have to. I think if there's anything I want people to take from this who are listening, I think we have to stop drinking the Kool-Aid and understand that we are not going to turn into a world-class nation. I don't know who instilled in the American public that a handful of guys playing in Europe, a bunch of MLS guys, and another bunch of guys who play in the second division of England are going to measure up against teams like Argentina, France, and the Netherlands. It's just not feasible. No. There's a lot more work that has to go into this than just having guys play in Europe. Look, anybody can play in Europe nowadays. The proof is with the American players that are going to Europe. Some of these guys clearly don't belong there. I'm sorry. They don't. They have good agents that get them there. So, you have to take playing in Europe with a grain of salt as well. I mean, I know I could list a laundry list of players that went and played in Europe and were equally as useless, right? So it's more than just playing in Europe and playing on a Champions League team. It's about fomenting a winning culture. It's about building a process. It's about having a manager who understands the players. It's about the players wanting to play for that manager. And it's about cutting heads. Those who are a cancer, those who do not belong on the national team, because they're not good for the national team have to go, even if they're playing for Champions League teams. You have to make decisions. And this program hasn't done it. And this is the end result of all those poor decisions.
You know, when Jurgen Klinsmann cut Landon Donovan from the 2014 World Cup roster because he did take that sabbatical. And now we're seeing with what's going on with Pulisic and also Musa and maybe a couple others who were not injured or who are not recovering from injury. Because I understand, you know, Serginho Dest, maybe he still has a little nagging here and there, fine, whatever. If he wants to. Jedi. Yep. I mean, I know Ricardo Pepe was injured the entire year and the Versi as well. So he is, you know, exempt. But when you have someone like Christian Pulisic, whether he likes it or not, he's the face of the national team, whether he likes it or not.
No, he likes it. He likes it. Of course he does. He wants to. I've been covering soccer players all my life. He likes being the face of the national team. Everybody wants to take the humble, messy playbook, but no. When they're saying that you're the best this country's ever produced, you like it. Right. You might go about it a different way, and I respect the way he goes about it. He's a very introverted kid, and well, he's a man now. He's 26, I believe. He's an introverted guy who doesn't like to expose himself as maybe other top athletes would like to, and I respect that. I think that's what's made him who he is. But he likes all these players like being told that they're good and that they're the stars of their teams.
Okay, good. I'm glad. But still, though, see, I don't know if you want to send a message across the bow to say you're not making the roster for the World Cup that's going to be on home soil. Now, I don't know if Pochettino will do that, but if he does, to be honest with you, I wouldn't mind it, because my opinion is this, and I'm agreeing with you that there's got to be a lesson here somewhere. Some way, somehow, a lesson has to be taught here. If out of the blue, Pochettino says Christian Pulisic is not going to be on the World Cup roster because he decided not to be on this Gold Cup roster, do you think that could happen?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. Okay. I think, you know, Christian is the best player the country has. I think what happened is, you know, how can I say this without, because I've heard stuff and I want to have the reporting properly before I say it. But,
be diplomatic. Go ahead.
I'll be diplomatic. Look, I think, you know, I just think that there's a major breakdown in communication, and I think Pochettino has a standard. I think Pulisic also has that standard, but you know, you don't want to go to this by yourself. You know, I think Pulisic doesn't want to go to war by himself and face the scrutiny by himself, and in a way, he has a point, right? Like if everybody else is bailing, why do you want me to expose? Now, he should be there, I think. But then again, there's a lack of transparency. Had Pulisic just come out and said, look, I've played for 2 years. I have a hip problem. I want to be there. But I think if I play this tournament and this summer, it's going to be detrimental for me for the rest of the year. I would like to recuperate. We would have said, "Oh, sucks. This sucks. Yeah. It's the worst thing since, you know," but we would have understood it.
Exactly.
That's all that had to be done. It was U.S. Soccer who planted that it was Pulisic's decision to pull out. So there's a big disconnect right there.
Yeah.
And
no, I agree.
And Pochettino is left in the middle going, well, you know, are you committed? Are you not committed? Well, if he's not committed, you know, it's a cluster mess, right? So, you know, these guys can't be that. You know, I don't care that they're playing in Europe and they're away from. I mean, these guys are not dumb. They know that this team needs a couple of morale lifting victories. They should have been there. There's no excuse. I mean, for Pull. I mean, again, unless we ever get told the proper information, we'll never know. Is if he's injured, well, he can't play. But if he just wants vacation time, he could have taken the Gold Cup off and he could have played these 2 friendlies because that's what this federation does. It negotiates with its players, with the club. It doesn't matter about winning. They have to negotiate and tailor everybody. The federation itself put itself in this situation, right? So this is a long line of things that have led to this. So
Exactly.
I don't know. I mean, he's not going to be left off of the World Cup, I don't think, unless something really, really bad happens between him and Pochettino. But before that happens, Pochettino will probably leave. I mean, there's no point in going to the World Cup if you're not going to go with Pulisic. I mean, the United States' chances drop tremendously without Pulisic. And if there's anything that I've learned over the last couple of years, is like this team, aside from Pulisic and Weston McKennie, we need Ricardo Pepi healthy, man. For me, he's the best striker this team has. Mm-hmm. I don't know why he doesn't get the press that he deserves. This kid scores off the bench. He scores games when he saved Berhalter's job.
Yep.
A few times during World Cup qualifying when he was 17, 18 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
We need a strong Ricardo Pepi to help these guys because I think he could be an unsung hero at the World Cup. Stop with these lies, these notions that, we're 3 forwards. No, we're not. We need Ricardo Pepi. The second striker should be Balogun. And the third striker, who cares who it is because they're not national team caliber, international caliber forwards anyway, strikers anyways. Ricardo Pepi has to come into the fold, and that should be one of the biggest priorities going into the stretch run to the World Cup is making sure that kid is the number 9 for the U.S. men's national team because that's one of the few players I think could really lighten the load for a Pulisic, a Tim Weah, a Weston McKennie, Malik Tillman maybe, and the other guy who hopefully could turn it around, maybe Gio Reyna, although, we'll see. But if he can play, then the thing kind of changes a little bit. But again, all of that is hypotheticals. We need to see these guys on the field 3 games in a row to see if they can play, if they can be fluid. And we just never see that. And that's been a big disservice to the whole process.
I want to go now your side of the footballing world in CONMEBOL. Luis Suarez, before he announced his retirement from Uruguay, every time he got the call, he went. Lionel Messi, every time Argentina called him and said, we need you, he went. And even in Europe, with the Nations League in UEFA, Cristiano Ronaldo, 40 years old, went back to Portugal and won them the UEFA Nations League title for them and won it like they won the European trophy, like they won the World Cup itself. When you see these players saying that we love coming to play for our national team, Ronaldo could probably keep on going till maybe he's 50, which that probably won't happen, but you never know if he takes that, I don't know, magic juice or whatever it is that he wants to drink. But you see them right away. They get the phone call, they pick it up. It's the national team head coach. It's as you said, it's Bielsa for Uruguay. Luis, we need you. I'm coming.
That story is a little bit different, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm going to quote Tony Meola, who once said, "Winners win," and the best example is the best player of all time, Lionel Messi. Lionel Messi played against Colombia last night, South American World Cup qualifier, which Argentina drew with Colombia 1-1. Guess where Lionel Messi was this morning? He was in Miami preparing for the Club World Cup. I don't know how the hell he got to Miami in such short time, but I don't know. I guess the Jorge Mas family owns a teleportation device, but obviously he took a private plane and he got there, and here he was training for a Club World Cup, which apparently he's taking very seriously, which could be one of the lone bright spots for a tournament that no one's taking seriously. Mm-hmm. Winners win, and there you have it. The best, exactly. the player who has nothing left to prove to anybody has a lot to prove to himself and sets the example. And there he is. He played a World Cup qualifier. He asked to be substituted because he wasn't feeling he was going to, Thiago Almada, who eventually scored the tying goal for Argentina, was going to be substituted. He told Lionel Scaloni, take me out. He should stay in. And he took a plane, and here he is. He's ready to go. He's going to play on, I believe it's Saturday, right?
Yep.
So that's it. That's all you need,
Yep, exactly. That's all you need. Optajack made this report on social media that for the first time since November 9th of 1980 in a World Cup qualifier on the road, the United States allowed 4 goals inside the first 40 minutes of that match down at the Azteca against Mexico. This past Tuesday's match was the first time they've done that on home soil. That is unbelievable.
I mean, it's the culmination. I mean, all these stats start rearing their ugly head when things are just not going right? I mean, how many more wake-up calls does this program need? I mean, honestly, how many more? I mean, the Gio Reyna situation was the first one. I mean, let's take a look at this generation, the golden generation. Whatever the first 4 years with Greg Berhalter were, okay, he was the manager. There's nothing we can do. Let's not go rewrite history. All right, he was a manager. Okay, after they lost to the Netherlands, to get to this point, what happened? One of your best players fights with the manager internally, and it led to a whole cluster mess that exposed everybody, right? Situation number one. Yep. Situation number two, the manager leaves. The manager is out for almost a year. He gets rehired in a process that left a lot to be desired. That manager, the team begins to flounder. A lot of things start becoming exposed about how light things are around the team. The team gets grouped in the Copa America. Greg Berhalter gets fired. They take, again, you could forgive the federation for the slow process of hiring Pochettino, because at this point, you're 2 years deep. The amount of the people that you could realistically hire was very thin, and they probably got the best manager, at least on paper, that they could possibly get, given the horrific situation that they had put themselves in, right? Okay, yeah. He comes in. What happens after that? Well, you go 0-2 in the Nations League against opponents that realistically you should beat, and then you have these 2 set of friendlies that continue to show that the team isn't a deep team, that there's a lot of wake-up calls. And at one point, somebody has to just get into a room and say, hey, it's it. It's over. We cannot go any lower than this. Those who want to be there are there. Those who don't want to be there can go. This is what we're going to do. And if you're not here for the next time we call in a roster, we'll never see you again, at least in this process, or while we're here as the manager or as the board of directors or whatever. That's the only way you could try to right this ship. And then after 2026, this, in my opinion, this federation needs a major house cleaning, and it needs an entire reset, and it needs to start realistically putting pillars into place to say, what do we want to accomplish in 10 years? What do we want to accomplish in 20 years? What do we want to accomplish in 30 years? And work towards those goals, which is what we were doing up until around 2010. And then after that, we got delusions of grandeur, and we started doing things just to do them, and we changed our entire philosophy or our way of thinking, and now here we are. Those moments brought us here. All we can do is try to put a Band-Aid over the situation to try and have the best World Cup possible, and then after that, we have to do a reset and try to be a normal federation. U.S. soccer has never been perfect. But, at least from 2002 to around 2010, things were a lot smoother. We kind of knew where we were at in the world, and we kind of knew where we had to get to. Then it just, all hell broke loose. And then, we went from, we want to win a World Cup to 20 years from now to we're going to play beautiful soccer in 2 weeks. You just watch us. And that doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. It's just not the way. I mean, I'm as a reporter and as a fan more than anything, I'm frustrated because I thought that we were on the right track, and then we've completely blown it. I mean, I've seen things in the last 8 years, which I go, nobody does this. I mean, why are we doing this? Why are we like holding our national team up to accommodate everybody else other than the goal, which is to win? You know, we need to win. The only way you can achieve great things is by building a winning culture and building towards winning those, achieving those achievements. And today, I really don't know what the plan is.
Yeah.
Aside that, we hired Mauricio Pochettino to just be an emergency hire to fix whatever he can fix. But the problem is he can't fix anything because he 40% of the time he doesn't coach the players that he needs to coach in order to fix things. So, I mean, at this point, it's really hard to look at this and judge it and say that what's this process? This process has been a free-for-all for a long time, and this is where we're at. And at this point, I don't know how much lower we can go than getting grouped at the Gold Cup. But
Yeah.
I want to say that's an impossibility, but you never know.
No, you never know. Out of the 2 games played between Turkiye and Turkiye, I guess they pronounce it now, and Switzerland, which were there at least 2, maybe 3 players that were at least a bright spot, saying you could see them on a World Cup roster, possibly? And obviously, I think when he got subbed into the second half against Switzerland, even though they didn't score a goal, but I thought he finally kind of brought some calmness and some energy, was Diego Luna. Is Diego Luna possibly he could make the World Cup roster?
I think he's on the World Cup roster at this point. Right now, today, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's on the World Cup roster. I think Diego Luna has been the only true find, so to speak, since Mauricio Pochettino took over. But then again, we knew that this is what Diego Luna could bring, right? Grit, fight. He's a good passer of the ball. He could be explosive in certain spaces on the field. Is he a Christian Pulisic? Is he a Tim Weah? Is he a speedy player? No, he's more of that kind of Carlos Tevez, really short, stocky kind of guy. He can use his body well. We knew that. I mean, Pochettino kind of gave this kid a platform to be the player that we knew he could be. Let's not forget that this is a federation that left this kid home for the Olympics.
I know. Exactly.
So
exactly.
You know, this federation almost lost this player to Mexico. You know, Pochettino is a smart manager. He saw somebody who showed him something, and he's repaid him. He's the only player that I think has been consistent since he started playing for Pochettino. Then, more than anybody, there's a lot of red flags here. I mean, Johnny Cardoso hasn't played one good match for the U.S. men's national team.
No, he hasn't.
I mean, that's scary because this kid could be playing in Atletico Madrid next year. And Johnny Cardoso is starting to fall into Sasha Kljestan territory, where Sasha Kljestan was a very good club player. He had very good Champions League games. He was a very good player in the team that he played for in Belgium. He played 4 years for Anderlecht in Belgium, and every time he just got on the national team during the Bob Bradley era, he just couldn't do it. And and Johnny's look. I'm sad to see Johnny because I saw this kid play some really difficult games when he was at Inter in Porto Alegre in Brazil against River Plate and Copa Libertadores. I saw Johnny playing Copa Libertadores, which in itself is another monster. And I said, wow, this kid, he's American. He's holding his own. He's a starter on a semi big team in Brazil. He's one of the bigger teams in Brazil. He's played under various coaches with different ideologies. He played under an Argentinian coach, Chacho Coudet. And he did very well in those games. I mean, the day I saw him play against River Plate at El Monumental, I wanted my team to win, obviously, but I was watching Johnny. I was like, wow, what a good performance from this kid. I mean, I was going, how come Berhalter not call this guy at this point? I mean, look at the games he's playing against, the scenarios he's playing against. But he has not been able to translate that to the national team. And he's working under, in my opinion, one of the best managers you could possibly work with in Manuel Pellegrini at Real Betis for now. And he might have the possibility of working under Diego Simeone. This guy has worked under very good managers. I don't know. I mean, I'm starting to get a little scared for Johnny in regards to his plays. I mean, I think he has a lot of potential, but wow, man, he can't perform for the national team. And yeah, I mean, I'll do a quick glance right now. Just Tillman had better performances. It's nothing to really write home about yet, but at least they're a lot better than what we're used to. I mean, Jack McGlynn, yeah, okay. What can you really say? Yeah, he could be a substitute player. He's not going to win you a World Cup game, right? So he could be on the roster depending. The Aronson brothers, again, disappointing. I don't know. Mark McKenzie maybe could, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's not really much that you could take a look at from this squad and say, these guys are closer to the World Cup. I mean, if you take a look at these games, realistically, you can honestly say none of these players belong on the World Cup's team, except for maybe Diego Luna.
Right, and that's what I was going with. I mean, we both agreed about Diego Luna. I thought maybe Jack McGlynn has something, not as a starter, but as a substitute in the World Cup to come in. Maybe he sneaks in a goal here and there. He has the left foot to do the damage. So, I mean, that's where I see it. Everyone else has just been disappointing. I don't know if Patrick Ajimong is ready for this level at all. I mean, he did well in the January camp, but then again, that's a January camp because that's not a full. You're not facing the full team of your oppositions either, so I don't think he's ready for this yet. But
I think he showed a lot of skill sets that could be useful, but against maybe at the Gold Cup he might shine because again the teams you're playing against the Gold Cup are in theory, again we have to now start saying this, in theory they're below the United States, but anything can happen. But yeah, Ajimon, I think against high quality defenders is just, he's not going to be able to cut it. But then again, like I just said it a couple of, minutes ago, this is a national team program that has two strikers that could play at that international level. It's Ricardo Pepi, and I do believe behind Balogun. I mean, or step below is Balogun.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then everybody else, Josh Sargent, Daryl Dike, Brian White, all these other guys, they're window dressing, they're in case of emergency, break the glass. I mean, they're not players that you're going to say, these guys are going to win me a game against, the Netherlands. No, I mean, they're roster spots and that's it. So, we have to stop thinking that because we have players who are scoring a ton of goals in the championship in England, and that's going to translate to us beating Germany at the World Cup. It's not. I mean, it's simply not. It's a step a little bit higher from MLS. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's all it is, unfortunately. And this is what this is the pile of crap that we have right now in front of us that needs to be fixed. And hopefully it can be. Hopefully.
Can I just say one more thing? Aside from everything that we had, I just want to say this. Here are the things that really are mind-boggling to me. All right, Karen Carter-Vickers, you could say, may not be to the liking of Mauricio Pochettino. All right, maybe the two Celtic defenders may not be the kind of defenders that Pochettino likes. Okay, but what happened to Marlon Fossi? What happened to Gianluca Buzio?
Yeah.
Ricky de Ledesma?
Yeah.
Right, he had a decent year for PSG. Tanner Tessman, I'm reading these names off. Tanner Tessman, Yunus Musa, I mean, come on. Yunus Musa, the excuse, I don't know what the personal reason was, but, the excuse that he's going to transfer to Napoli is not, how many players are playing right now in the Nations League in Europe and are transferring to different clubs? That's, come on. I mean, Yunus Musa could have realistically had been, the only thing he could have done is had good performance to help his cause, because I don't know how much wine Conte was drinking when he said, yeah, let's sign Yunus Musa. He had one bad game after another at Milan last season. But, I mean, there's a handful of players right there that could have been in this camp, and for footballing decisions were left off. But, I mean, come on. I mean, Gianluca Busio is a player that I think, Pochettino at one time was starting to insert in. I mean, these are the things that now I fall on Pochettino. It's like you were starting to bring these guys in, and they were kind of, I had written many articles about Pochettino needs to bust up the team, not get rid of everybody, but has to bring in faces to compete. And the only logical players that he could bring in were about 4 or 5 that could really compete with certain other players for spots. One of those players is Gianluca Buzio, who I think, surrounded by Pulisic, McKinney, and a couple of other high-caliber U.S. players, could really bring something to the table. And he was starting to get inserted in. Aiden Morris is another one who, he plays at Middlesbrough, but they disappeared completely from the map.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand any logical explanation. Maybe some injuries here and there, but like these guys are gone from the roster. I mean, Aiden Morris couldn't play in this Gold Cup. I mean, he's a guy who needs time under Pochettino. I mean, I'm flabbergasted, really. I mean, we're calling in the guys who we shouldn't, and the guys who we could possibly take a look at, even they're not on this roster. So I just feel it's just a wasted opportunity. And, I don't know. At this point, we're just crossing our fingers that somehow this will work out. But I think that's the worst thing that could happen is that this works out, because somebody's going to say, you see, I was proven right. We don't need anything. We just need to do well at the World Cup. And you don't build a winning soccer culture by just thinking you're going to win a couple of games at the World Cup and bang your drum. That's not how it works.
No, that's definitely not how it works. And unfortunately, we're stuck where we are. I guess my last question to you is this. What changes internally at U.S. Soccer do you think needs to happen to, end the miscommunication that goes on at Soccer House to make them work like what Argentina does, like what England does, what France, what I don't know.
I want to be very clear to the soccer-loving public of the United States that there is no one great federation that does things 100% perfect. There's a lot. Argentina are the current World Cup champions, but there's a lot of things in the Argentinian Soccer Federation that needs to be looked at that's not on the up and up. They just have to, they have the grace that right now they have Lionel Scaloni and a group of players who are doing great things, right? Same thing happens in Brazil. Same thing happens in England. Nobody runs smoothly. But there are certain pillars that are in place to make sure that things run smoothly. One of the things that I would change is kind of doing something that Tab Ramos wanted to implement, and that is we need to make people value playing for the national team. We need our young players to walk into the men's national team, not the women's, the men's side. But this applies to the women's as well. You could even throw the women into this. We need them to walk into a scenario where they're not being coached, more the men than the women, not being coached by guys they never heard of. They need to walk in and see that Brad Friedel's there, that Tony Meola's there, that John Harkes is there, that Clint Dempsey is there, that Landon Donovan is there. They need to feel closer to the national team. And they need to see that their heroes are there to help them, guide them through the process. Look at Argentina. And in this, I do applaud Argentina for. You take a look at the youth national teams in Argentina. They're head coached by players who have played games for Argentina. The assistant coaches of Lionel Scaloni are all Argentinian national team players of great pedigree. Walter Samuel, Roberto Ayala, Pablo Aymar. You need to instill that culture. We have those players. Some of them didn't get into coaching. So, you kind of lost those players, but they weren't incentivized either by the federation, right? So, but those that did, bring them in, see if they can coach at the youth level and start putting them into place so there could be a logical chain to the national team, a logical course and direction in the national team, and play to our strengths. We are a team that our identity is bunkering in and having talented wingers or talented players move forward and score goals. We can be that national team. I don't know now, but we need to find a way to build our teams to be that national team because that's what's worked for us in the past. There's no shame in that. The best example of this is Paraguay. Paraguay, who wanted to play pretty soccer for a while, look where they were when World Cup qualifying started. They were dead in the water. Gustavo Alfaro, who I think would make a good U.S. men's national team coach because he doesn't promise anything but being practical. And that's what, basically, a long story short to my answer, that's what we need. We need to get back to being practical. We need practical managers who know how to win games. We're losing that in U.S. soccer between this app that they want to do about performance and statistics and, bringing in B teams to Gold Cup. I mean, we're losing the opportunity it is to instill a winning culture in our program. We need to get back to just learning how to win games, how to manage difficult moments. Pretty soccer can wait. that's a reality. The United States has never played pretty soccer, and clearly, when we've tried to play pretty soccer under Berhalter and Klinsmann, and you could even say Mauricio Pochettino, now it hasn't worked. And with our most talented group that some of us say that we've ever had in history, at least on paper, it hasn't worked. All right, clearly the players now under 4 managers, right? Because you have to throw in the 2 interns as well. You can even throw in Dave Sarakin for some of these guys under 5 managers, have not been able to translate that pretty soccer that we all talk about. Well, get back to the basics. I don't know if you can do it now for this World Cup, but clearly 2026 forward, we got to get back to the basics and just start winning matches, being the best team in CONCACAF, maybe doing well in the Copa America and getting deep in the Copa America, and maybe for the 2030 World Cup, get as deep as we can. That's what we have to do, because we are not a top 10 nation. We are not a top 15 nation. The U.S. at this point ranks at least between the 30s and the 40s, in my opinion, based on how they play, what they show on the field. And the teams that are in that gap, all they can do is they have to build building blocks to better their program. And we're going to take a lot of steps backwards to take a couple of steps forward. And we need to start getting back into that groove. That's what we are. Because this whole idea that we're just going to mesmerize the world because we have a couple of Champions League caliber players is ludicrous. Is ludicrous because we're not the only team in the world that has Champions League caliber players.
Exactly. It's not just us, because everyone else around the world has a player playing either in Europe or they're playing in South America, because they're going to be exposed to the Champions League in UEFA, just like they'll be exposed to the Libertadores in CONMEBOL. It's just simple as that. And I know you know this, and I know this. Yet we get criticized for being truthful about the situation, where most of these so-called they're so knowledgeable about the game, they think they know more than the experts do, that they're going to call us out or whatever, which is absolutely totally wrong. So,
like I said, I don't want to get into like the whole. I think Roberto Baggio said it best. The biggest problems with soccer nowadays is that you have players who you couldn't string 2 passes together, giving soliloquies about what you need to do to be successful in soccer. I agree to that to a certain extent, because obviously you can't get World Cup winners to do on every show, right? But you work with what you got. But look, I think what we have to do, what I want to target, if there's anything I want to say, especially to the pundits and the YouTubers and everything, is that we need to start being truthful to ourselves. We've drank a lot of Kool-Aid, and we've divided ourselves too much along the way.
Exactly.
And anything we want to say, we divide ourselves along the way. We turned this into an MLS versus the players playing in Europe thing. We turned this against Greg Berhalter against Gio Reyna. We turned this against an evil federation and these fans. We turned this against MLS doesn't have promotion relegation against the promotion relegation lovers. I mean, we've divided ourselves into these stupid little niches, when the reality is the entire ecosystem has to work. We can't get players to Europe unless either A, they're poached by a couple of, like Pulisic was and McKinney was. But the reality is most of our players are going to get to Europe by playing in the domestic league. So we need a good domestic league to try and get some of these players to Europe. The biggest advantage MLS has is that the American player is practically worthless to them because they don't sell tickets, right? You can sell all the American players for as big a fee as you want. It's not going to hurt your bottom line, because the fans want to see Messi and Suarez. They don't want to see Paxton Aronson or Gianluca Buccio. So you can sell those guys off and give them a platform, and then sell them off for a high transfer value or the highest you can get for them. So it's good. It's beneficial for the American player. So we need to get this going, and we need to work together. Now, working together is a mutual understanding, which is we can't have the league saying, hey, please put 4 MLS players on the net. No. It all has to be a cohesive unit, and you have to allow the national team manager or managers to work with these players, be wherever they are, and turn them into a national team. And that takes an entire cohesive unit. Is it going to work all the time? No, but it's the only way we can do this. We got to stop fighting amongst each other, and we have to start telling the truth. We are not I think it's evidence at this point. We are not a national team that's going to wake up after playing poorly for 4 years, are going to be semifinalists of the next World Cup because we're playing at home. That's just not that's not going to happen. So let's speak the truth. We are a bad national team at this point. We could go lower than this and we could get grouped in the Gold Cup, but we have to start winning games. We have to start, give Pochettino the players that he needs. And those that want to be there will be there. And those that don't, goodbye. And publicly say, hey, we gave out the list. They didn't want to come. We're not calling them again. And yeah, it might lead to disaster for 2026, but at least you save face. You can't reward players who don't want to be there with World Cup appearances. That's the worst thing that you could do for this program.
Exactly, and I agree with you 100%. Kelvin, as always, I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you for your insights and your expert opinion on this. As once again, just another debacle for U.S. soccer, and hopefully, if they can somehow right the ship, if it's not by this upcoming World Cup next summer, hopefully it'll be for the 2030 cycle, and we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen there. But as always, Kelvin, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and have a good day.
Thank you. And hopefully there's light at the end of the tunnel. Now, it may not be 2026, it might be 2030, but, we've been around for so long, so we might as well. What's another 4 years at this point, right?
Exactly. I've got time on my calendar. I know that. Thank you again, and have a good day. Thanks again.
You too, man. Have a good one.
And that was Kelvin Loyola talking about this debacle, this whole situation with U.S. soccer, and it's not pretty, it's not good, and unfortunately for the U.S. men's national team, we have a dilemma. And look, I'm not saying they don't deserve a break, and like I said, look, you need a break, fine, but you got to pick when to take this break. Now, they could have said no to these June games and then be ready to come in for the Gold Cup. But I guess not. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But here's my tweets. I probably should have posted them online for all of you here. But let me read to you what I typed up. And I was very upset at halftime. Very, very upset. What a disgusting display of football those 45 minutes were. Absolutely horrible. These players aren't showing the means or the ways to battle against a top side in Europe. The back line is an utter shambles. They look like a bunch of lost sheep in the middle of a muddy field trying to find their next meal. And then it's in the back of the net. This is pathetic. This program shouldn't be this bad, but it has and it will continue to be. Why is Matt Turner starting this game? He hasn't played any minutes since the disaster at the Nations League. He never played for Forest or for Crystal Palace. Yet he's starting. He should be benched for third keeper. This roster is a mix of players from MLS and abroad, and they all look so timid, lost, and pathetic. I am well aware that the Swiss are a damn good team, but how about showing some heart for the badge? This would have been 5 or 6-0 if they didn't mishandle the ball. U.S. soccer has no spine, has no care of telling Pulisic and those players who aren't injured or recovering from injury to get their backside on the roster. They continue to be weak-minded and refuse to put their foot down. This is all on Soccer House. Now, once again, I was very angry. I was very upset, just like all of you are. And you can still be angry and upset for what we have seen here, because the truth is this, is that it wasn't good enough. This match on Tuesday was the worst of the worst, and we must not be at that level again. Now, look, we have problems, and they are all across the board. Not just problems with MLS. We also have problems with our American players playing abroad in Europe. It all adds up. It's everything. And this is why many people are mad. I am mad. The pundits are mad. The former players are mad. Taylor Twellman got upset, shut the damn thing off probably at halftime. We cannot continue to play these silly, stupid games. If you wonder why the national team is starting to fail, you already know what the answers are. Some way, somehow, U.S. soccer, please get this ship righted the correct way. And if you do that and you improve, then we're on. But this now was a Gold Cup that should have been used properly with the players who are supposed to be on the World Cup roster. Nope. Unless you're injured and you're not able to make it, I understand. You just want a break? You just want to take a break from the national team? Well, guess what? Now you're going to prove to the rest of the country you don't want to be on the national team. And even though you're going to say all the right things and you're going to try to lessen the blow, the damage has already been done. You showed us what you're feeling right now. And it's just been an epic failure after epic failure after epic failure. That's all I can say. But until this thing gets fixed, I don't know where we're going to be. And I don't know how we're going to do in the World Cup. Forget the Gold Cup for just a moment, because none of the players that are going to be on that World Cup roster, maybe for one or two of them, might make the World Cup roster, but the majority of them are not here. Once again, if you're injured, I understand. I'm not against those players who are injured. If you're recovering from an injury, I understand. We're not aiming it at you. Plain and simple. I'm talking about the ones who were healthy enough, ready to go. They just decided they don't want to be on the team for this summer. Oh, well. You could have said no for the 2 friendly matches in June. You could probably say no in September. But no, you didn't want to do that, did you? Nope. I want my whole summer off. And then I'm going to get ready for the European season. Great job. Great job. Excellent job. Wonderful. Yes, I'm clapping. More of a golf clap, I guess, or sarcastic. But, what are you going to do? And how is Pochettino going to function with a roster that's not as good than it should have been? I don't know. But one thing is for sure. There's a lot of problems at Soccer House, and they got to be fixed. And if they're not going to be fixed, unless it's the same old wash, rinse, repeat BS we're going to get from them until something truly gets fixed. The cycle of stupidity has to end somewhere. And until it does, we're still going to get stuck in the middle of it. But it's very frustrating, and it is very, very hard to feel positive about this situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank my guest tonight. Once again, Kelvin Loyola of Bolavip.com, South American football journalist, and it also reports on the U.S. men's national team. My name is Daniel Feuerstein. Join me this Friday night for the NPSL Soccer Show, and then I will try to bring in a regular show sometime next week, probably doing an afternooner, and we'll try to get a guest for you there, and then we'll review the Red Bull match at Austin FC on that show as well. Pardon me. But once again, my name is Daniel Feuerstein. Thank you very much for watching me tonight. And as always, please, please, please enjoy your football. Thank you. Take care. So long. Have a good night. Bye-bye for now. Have a good night, everybody.